twilight celeste gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Right, quick, march.
Gordon M. Amith, Jr.
Edmiro Abad.
Marie Rose Abad.
Andrew Anthony Abate.
Vincent Paul Abate.
Lawrence Christopher Abel.
Alana Abraham.
William F. Abrahamson.
Richard Anthony Aceto.
Heinrich Bernard Ackerman.
Paul Aquaviva.
Christian Adams.
Donald Leroy Adams.
Patrick Adams.
Shannon Lewis Adams.
Stephen George Adams.
Ignatius Udo Adanga.
Christy A. Adamo.
Terrence Edward Adderley, Jr.
Sophia B. Otto.
Lee Adler.
Daniel Thomas Aflito,
Emmanuel Akwazi Afwakwa,
Alok Agarwal,
Mukul Kumar Agawala,
Joseph Agnello,
David Scott Agnes,
Joao Alberto da Francesca Aguilar Jr.,
Brian G. Ahern,
Jeremiah Joseph Ahern,
Joanne Marie Aladiatis,
Savar Ahmed,
Terrence Andre Aiken,
Godwin O. Ashala,
Trudy M. Alagero,
Andrew Alamino,
Margaret Ann Alario,
Gary M. Albero,
John Leslie Albert,
Peter Craig Alderman,
and my Uncle Martin Lizzle. We love you, we miss you, we think about you every day, and continue to keep watching over me and my family.
and my nephew and friend, firefighter Peter J. Carroll. We all love you, we all miss you, especially your smile. You'll be so proud of your 3 beautiful grandchildren.
Jacqueline Delane Aldridge Frederick,
David D. Alger,
Ernest Akios,
Edward L. Allegretto,
Eric Allen,
Joseph Ryan Allen,
Richard Dennis Allen,
Richard L. Allen,
Christopher E. Allingham,
Anna S. W. Allison,
Janet Marie Alonzo,
Anthony Alvarado,
Antonio Javier Alvarez,
Victoria Alvarez Brito,
Telmi E. Aver,
Cesar Amaranto Alviar,
Tariq Amanulaha,
Angelo Amaranto,
James M. Amato,
Joseph Amatuccio,
Paul W. Ambrose,
Christopher Charles Amoroso,
Craig Scott Anderson,
Kazuhiro Anai,
Calixto Anaya Jr.,
Joseph P. Enchundia,
Kermit Charles Anderson,
Yvette Constance Anderson,
John Jack Andrea Keogh,
Michael Rourke Andrews,
Jean Ann Adbuki,
Su Nia Ong,
Joseph Angelina Sr.,
Joseph John Angelini Jr.,
David Lawrence Agnell,
Mary Lynn Edwards Angel,
Gloria Angeletta,
Doreen J. Angrosini,
Lorraine Angeletta Antigua,
Seema David Aoyama,
and my mom, Frances Harrows. Hi, Mom. Today we gather to share memories and to pray for our beloved departed and their families. My mom, Frances, was 76 years old on 9/11 and was no one that would stick out in the crowd. That is, unless it were not for her acts of love. She was a loving wife. Ironically, her husband, my father, built and dug out the very foundations of this building at the very beginning. She was a great and sacrificing mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. And she was also a great friend. After her death, I heard so many great secret ways in which she provided comfort and emotional support to all who asked for her. Mom, I will never forget you with the abundance of love you gave me. And one more thing, if I may. This year, a representative of the House referred to our loss as just another incident. This year, a network commentator said the president's performance in Helsinki was a traitorous act, as was 9/11. And last week, a senator attacked a Supreme Court nominee and called him a racist for alleged comments after 9/11. Stop. Stop. Please, stop using the bones and ashes of our loved ones as props in your political theater. Their lives, sacrifices, and death are worth so much more. Let's not trivialize them or us. It hurts. To my mom and to all of you and your loved ones, never forget.
and my grandfather, Michael St. Philip, whom I'm named after. We love and miss you every day, Papa Mikey.
Peter Paul Apollo,
Faustino Apostle Jr.,
Frank Thomas Aquilino,
Patrick Michael Araños,
David Gregory Arche,
Michael George Archinsky,
Louis Arena,
Barbara Jean Arastegui,
Adam P. Arias,
Michael J. Armstrong,
Jack Charles Aaron,
Joshua Todd Aaron,
Richard Avery Arono,
Myra Joy Aronson,
Japhet Jesse Arier,
Carl Francis Asaro,
Michael A. Asiak,
Michael Edward Asher,
Janice Marie Ashley,
Thomas J. Ashton,
Manuel O. Asidembe,
Greg A. Atlas,
Gerald Thomas Atwood,
James Autofred,
Louis F. Aversano Jr.,
Ezra Albiez,
Sandy Ayala,
Arlene T. Barbaquitas,
Eustace R. Bacchus,
John J. Bakliaka,
Jane Ellen Basler,
Brett T. Bailey,
Andrew J. Bailey,
Tanya Bakalinskia,
Garnet Ace Bailey,
Sharon M. Balcom,
Michael S. Baksh,
Catherine Fantis,
Michael Andrew Bain, and my uncle Łukasz Tomasz Milewski, 21 years old. I'm so sad I never got to meet you, but from what my mom told me, you were an amazing person. There's not one day that I do not think about you. You are not forgotten.
and my father, Carl Francis Asaro,
Gerard Baptiste,
Walter Baron,
Gerard A. Barbara,
Paul Vincent Barbaro,
James William Barbella,
Victor Daniel Barbosa,
Christine Jana Barbuto,
Colleen Ann Barco,
David Michael Barkway,
Matthew Barnes,
Melissa Rose Barnes,
Evan J. Barron,
Sheila Patricia Barnes,
Renee Barrett Arjun,
Arthur Thaddeus Barry,
Diane G. Barry,
Maurice Vincent Barry,
Scott D. Bart,
Carlton W. Bartles,
Guy Barsby,
Ina B. Bassina,
Alicia Christine Burton Balsmagian,
Kenneth William Bosnicki,
Stephen Joseph Bates,
Paul James Battaglia,
W. David Bauer,
Ivan Luis Carpio Bautista,
Marilyn Capito Bautista,
Mark Lawrence Bavis,
Jasper Baxter,
Lorraine G. Bay,
Michelle Beal,
Todd M. Beamer,
Paul Frederick Beattini,
Jane S. Beatty,
Alan Anthony Bevan,
Lawrence Ira Beck,
Mamet Marie Beckles,
Carl John Bedigian,
Michael Ernest Beekman,
and my cousin, Brian Canizaro. You are missed every day, but please know you can rest in peace, knowing that what you did in life as a firefighter, husband, and father echoes in eternity.
and my husband, Benjamin Keith Clark. You will always be our hero. You will always be loved. You will always be missed. We thank you for the legacy and the foundation that you set. My husband was a chef, and he went back into the building after getting hundreds out and tried to carry a woman out that was a quadriplegic from the 88th floor. He and 3 maintenance workers, they never made it out, but he'll always be our hero.
Maria A. Bear,
Max J. Bielke,
Yelena Belanowski,
Nina Patrice Bell,
Debbie S. Bellows,
Stephen Elliott Belson,
Paul M. Benedetti,
Denise Lenore Benedetto,
Brian Craig Bennett,
Eric L. Bennett,
Olivia Bennett,
Margaret L. Benson,
Dominic J. Berardi,
James Patrick Berger,
Stephen Howard Berger,
John P. Bergen,
Alvin Bergson,
Daniel David Bergstein,
Graham Andrew Berkeley,
Michael J. Berkeley,
Donna M. Bernards,
David W. Bernard,
William H. Bernstein,
David M. Beret,
David Shelby Berry,
Joseph John Berry,
William Reed Bethke,
Yanene Bitru,
Timothy B. Betterly,
Carolyn Mayer Bugh,
Edward Frank B.A.,
Paul Michael Byer,
Anil Tehiram Bhavani,
Beller J. Buchan,
Shimmy D. Bergelson,
Peter Alexander Bielfeld,
William G. Biggert,
Brian Eugene Bilcher,
Mark Bingham,
Carl Vincent Beanie,
and my brother, firefighter Paul Hanlon Keating. Paulie, we think about you every day and the family messenger.
and my beloved son Joshua Todd Aaron. We miss you every day and we love you forever.
Gary Eugene Bird, Joshua David Birnbaum, George John Bishop, Chris Romeo Bushendat, Jeffrey Donald Bittner, Albert Baliwa Blackman Jr., Christopher Joseph Blackwell, Carrie Rosetta Blackburn, Susan Leigh Blair, Harry Blanding Jr., Janice Lee Blaney, Craig Michael Blass, Rita Blau, Richard Middleton Blood Jr., Michael Andrew Bacardi, John Paul Bacci, Michael L. Bocchino, Susan L. Bocchino, Dira Francis Bodley, Bruce Douglas Bohm, Mary Catherine Murphy Bofa, Nicholas Andrew Bogdan, Darren Christopher Bohan, Lawrence Francis Oiseau, Vincent M. Boland Jr., Tori Hamzavi Olorshi, Alan Bonadurenko, Andre Bonhor Jr., Colin Arthur Bonnet, Frank J. Bonamo, Yvonne Lucia Bonomo, Sean Booker Sr., Kelly Ann Booms, Canfield D. Boone, Mary Jane Booth, Sherry Ann Bordeaux, Christine Bordenave, Jerry J. Borg, Martin Michael Borashevsky, Richard Edward Bosco, and my mother, Susan Klein. We love and miss you very much. Rest in peace.
And my sister-in-law, Ann Marchese. We think of you every day. We love you very much. You're never far from our hearts and always in our thoughts and prayers. And we know we'll see you again in heaven one day. God bless you.
Klaus Botha,
Carol Marie Bouchard,
J. Howard Bolton,
Francisco Eligio Bruzer,
Thomas Harold Bowden Jr.,
Donna M. Bowen,
Kimberly S. Bowers,
Veroni Nicole Bowers,
Larry Bowman,
Sean Edward Bauman Jr.,
Kevin L. Bowser,
Gary R. Box,
Gennady Boyarsky,
Pamela Boyce,
Alan P. Boyle,
Michael Boyle,
Alfred J. Braca,
Sandra Canati Brace,
Kevin U. Brecken,
Sandy Wa Bradshaw,
David Brian Brady,
Alexander Bregninski,
Nicholas W. Brandemarty,
Daniel Raymond Brandhorst,
David Reed Gamboya Brandhorst,
Michelle Renee Bratton,
Patrice Brout,
Lydia Estelle Bravo,
Ronald Michael Breitweiser,
Edward A. Brennan III,
Frank H. Brennan,
Michael E. Brennan,
Peter Brennan,
Thomas Moore Brennan,
Daniel J. Brethel,
Gary Lee Bright,
Jonathan Eric Briley,
Mark A. Brisman,
Paul Gary Bristow,
Marion R. Britton,
and my brother and hero, Port Authority police officer David P. LaMagne, who believed in something even when it meant to sacrifice everything.
and my mother, Barbara P. Walsh. Remembering you is so very easy, Mom. We do it every single day. But missing you is a terrible heartache that never goes away. Keep watching over us, Mom. Send us those rainbows. We love you so much, and God bless America.
Mark Francis Broderick,
Herman Charles Brockhammer,
Keith A. Broomfield,
Bernard C. Brown II,
Janice J. Louise Brown,
Lloyd Stanford Brown,
Patrick John Brown,
Bettina B. Brown Radburn,
Mark Bruce,
Richard George Bruhert,
Andrew Brunn,
Vincent Edward Brunton,
Ronald Booker,
Brandon J. Buchanan,
Greg J. Buck,
Dennis Buckley,
Nancy Claire Boucher,
Patrick Joseph Buse,
John Edward Bulaga Jr.,
Stephen Bruce Bunin,
Christopher L. Burford,
Matthew J. Burke,
Thomas Daniel Burke,
William Francis Burke Jr.,
Charles F. Burlingame III,
Thomas E. Burnett Jr.,
Donald J. Burns,
Kathleen Ann Burns,
Keith James Burns,
John Patrick Burnside,
Irina Buslow,
Milton G. Bastillo,
Thomas M. Butler,
Patrick Dennis Byrne,
Timothy G. Byrne,
Daniel M. Caballero,
Jesus Neptali Cabezas,
Lillian Caceres,
Brian Joseph Cachia, Kenneth Marcus Caldwell.
Dominic E. Kalia.
Felix Bobby Caliste.
Francis Joseph Callahan.
Liam Callahan.
Suzanne M. Cali.
Gino Luigi Calvi.
Rocco Camage.
Michael F. Camarata.
David O.D. Campbell.
Jeffrey Thomas Campbell.
Robert Arthur Campbell.
Sandra Patricia Campbell.
Sean Thomas Canavan.
John A. Candela.
Vincent A. Cangelosi.
Stephen J. Cangelosi.
Lisa Bella Canava.
Brian Canasaro.
Michael R. Canty.
Louis Anthony Caparici.
Jonathan Neff Capello.
James Christopher Cappers.
Richard Michael Caproni.
Jose Manuel Cardona.
Dennis M. Carey Sr.
Edward Carlino.
Michael Scott Carlo.
And my father and guardian angel, Cesar Amaranto Alfred. We miss you and love you always.
And my grandfather, Joseph Biscadlo, even though I've never met you, I'll never forget you. I love you.
David G. Carlone.
Rosemary C. Carlson.
Mark Stephen Carney.
Joyce Ann Carpenetto.
Jeremy Kaz Carrington.
Michael T. Carroll.
Peter J. Carroll.
James Joseph Carson Jr.
Christopher Mikael Karstanjan.
Angeline C. Carter.
James Marcel Cartier.
Sharon Ann Carver.
Vivian Casaldic.
John Francis Casaza.
Paul Reagan Castillo.
Nellie Ann Hefferman Casey.
William Joseph Cashman.
Thomas Anthony Casoria.
William Otto Casper.
Alejandro Castano.
Arcelia Castillo.
Leonard M. Castriano.
Jose Ramon Castro.
William E. Caswell.
Richard G. Cardarelli.
Christopher Sean Caton.
Robert John Caulfield.
Mary Teresa Caulfield.
Judson Cavalier.
Michael Joseph Corley.
Joseph David Kane.
Juan Armando Cabalas.
Marcia G. Cecile Carter.
Jason Michael Cefalu.
Thomas Joseph Selick.
Anna Mercedes Centano.
Joni Sester.
John C. Chada.
Jeffrey Mark Chernoff.
Swarna Chalasani.
And my sister Vivian Casaldic. Vivian, you were the Jan Brady of us all. With the 5 of us, we always knew the rest of us were adopted, and you weren't. You were so different. We love and miss you. Your mother prays for you every day and hopes to see you soon.
And my wife, Arlene Ava Freed, we will never forget your smile, and we all love you.
William A. Chalkoff.
Eli Chalu.
Charles Lawrence Chan.
Mandy Chang.
Rosa Maria Chapa.
Mark Lawrence Charette.
David M. Charleboy.
Gregorio Manuel Chavez.
Pedro Francisco Checo.
Douglas McMillan Cherry.
Stephen Patrick Cherry.
Vernon Paul Cherry.
Nestor Julio Chevalier, Jr.
Swede Joseph Xavier.
Alexander H. Chiang.
Dorothy J. Chichero.
Luis Alfonso Chimbo.
Robert Chin.
Eddie Wing Wei Ching.
Nicholas Paul Chiaffo.
John G. Chapora,
Peter A. Chicharlo,
Catherine Ellis Schrules,
Kyoung Hee Casey Cho,
Abul K. Chowdhury,
Mohammed Salhudi Chowdhury,
Kristen Lael Christoph,
Pamela Chu,
Stephen Paul Chuknik,
Wei Ching Chung,
Christopher Chiaferdini,
Alex F. Ciccone,
Francis Ann Salente,
Elaine Silo,
Edna Cintron,
Nestor Andre Cintron III,
Robert D. Siri Sr.,
Juan Pablo Sinceros,
Benjamin Keith Clark,
Eugene Clark,
and my brother-in-law, firefighter Robert Curatolo, Engine 39, Ladder 16. Rob Finn, we are always your fans. You're a son, brother, husband, uncle, and cousin, and friend who possessed an incredible soul. It seems like that's the case for all the 3,000 innocent people we honor today. We miss that soul, that light, and the compassionate way you lived your life most about not having you with us. Your memory and legacy live on strongly in your family and friends who have served, are serving, or are currently pursuing service to protect the city, either as a member of the FDNY or NYPD. They continue to honor your memory and all of those who were lost on September 11th.
Yvette Moreno, and my brother, Kevin Joseph Froley. We miss you and love you, baby brother. May God bless you and may God bless America.
Gregory Allen Clark.
Gerald P. Fisher, Darlene E. Flagg, and her husband, Rear Admiral Wilson F. Flagg, United States Navy Reserve, retired.
Petty Officer Second Class, Matthew M. Flacco, United States Navy. Sandra N. Foster. First Lieutenant Richard P. Gabriel, United States Marine Corps, retired. Captain Lawrence D. Getzfred, USN. Cortez Gee. Brenda C. Gibson. Colonel Ronald F. Golinsky, United States Army, retired. Ian J. Gray. Diane Hale McKenzie. Stanley R. Hall. Carolyn B. Hammond. Michelle M. Heidenberger. Sheila M.S. Hine. Petty Officer First Class, Ronald J. Hemingway, United States Navy. Major Wallace Cole Hogan, Jr., United States Army. Staff Sergeant Jimmy I. Holly, United States Army, retired.
Angela M. Hout, Brady K. Howell, Peggy M. Hurt, Lieutenant Colonel Stephen N. Highland, Jr., United States Army. Lieutenant Colonel Robert J. Heimel, United States Air Force, retired. Sergeant Major Lacey B. Ivory, United States Army. Brian C. Jack. Stephen D. Jacoby. Lieutenant Colonel Dennis M. Johnson, United States Army. Judith L. Jones. Ann C. Judge. Brenda Kegler. Chandler R. Kelly. Yvonne E. Kennedy. Norma Cruz Kahn. Karen Ann Kincaid. Lieutenant Michael S. Lemon, United States Navy. David W. Lechek.
Dong Chol Lee. Jennifer Lewis. And her husband, Kenneth E. Lewis. Samantha L. Lightborn Allen. Major Stephen V. Long, United States Army. James T. Lynch, Jr. Terrence M. Lynch. Petty Officer Second Class, Nehaman Lyons IV, United States Navy. Shelley A. Marshall. Teresa M. Martin. Ada L. Mason Acker. Lieutenant Colonel Dean E. Matson, United States Army. Lieutenant General Timothy J. Maud, United States Army. Robert J. Maxwell. Renee A. May. Molly L. McKenzie. Dora Marie Machaca.
Patricia E. McKinley. Major Ronald D. Milam, United States Army. Gerald P. Morin, Jr. Odessa V. Morris. Petty Officer First Class Brian A. Moss, United States Navy. Teddington H. Moy. Lieutenant Commander Patrick J. Murphy, United States Navy Reserve. Christopher C. Newton. Can Win. Petty Officer Second Class Michael A. Noath, United States Navy. Barbara K. Olson. Ruben S. Arendo. Diane B. Pedro. Lieutenant Jonas M. Panic, United States Navy Reserve. Major Clifford L. Patterson, Jr., United States Army. Robert Pettinger. Robert R. Ploger III. And his wife, Zandra F. Ploger.
Lieutenant Darren H. Pontel, United States Navy Reserve. Scott Powell. Captain Jack D. Punches, United States Navy, retired. Petty Officer First Class Joseph J. Pisier, Jr., United States Navy. Lisa J. Rains. Deborah A. Ramser. Rhonda Sue Ramsusen. Petty Officer First Class Marcia D. Ratchford, United States Navy. Martha M. Reski. Todd H. Rubin. Cecilia E. Lawson Richard. Edward V. Rowenhorst. Judy Rowlett. Sergeant Major Robert E. Russell, United States Army, retired. Chief Warrant Officer William R. Ruth, United States Army Reserve. Charles E. Sabin, Sr. Marjorie C. Salamone.
John P. Sammartino. Colonel David M. Scales, United States Army. Commander Robert A. Schengal, United States Navy. Janice M. Scott. Lieutenant Colonel Michael L. Sleeves, United States Army, retired. Marian H. Serva. Commander Dan F. Schoenber, United States Navy. Anita M. Sherman. Diane M. Simmons. And her husband, George W. Wilson. Donald D. Simmons. Cheryl D. Sincock. Chief Greg H. Smallwood, United States Navy. Lieutenant Colonel Gary F. Smith, United States Army, Reserved. Marie Soper. Robert Spiesman. Patricia J. Stalls.
Edna L. Stevens. Norma Lang Sturley. Sergeant Major Larry L. Strickland, United States Army. Hilda E. Taylor. Lieutenant Colonel Kip P. Taylor, United States Army. Leonard E. Taylor. Sandra C. Taylor. Sandra D. Teague. Lieutenant Carl W. Teepee, United States Army, retired. Sergeant Tamara C. Thurman, United States Army. Lieutenant Commander Otis V. Tolbert, United States Navy. Staff Sergeant Willie Q. Troy, United States Army, retired. Lieutenant Commander Ronald J. Vaughn, United States Navy Reserve. Lieutenant Colonel Karen J. Wagner, United States Army. Meta L. Fuller. Specialist Chin Soon Pak Wells, United States Army. Staff Sergeant Madeline A. White, United States Army. Sandra L. White.
Ernest M. Wilshire. Lieutenant Commander David L. Williams, United States Navy. Major Dwayne Williams, United States Army. Chief Marvin Roger Woods, United States Navy, retired. Captain John D. Yamnicki, Senior, United States Navy, retired. Vicky Yancey, Petty Officer Second Class, Kevin W. Yoakum, United States Navy. Chief Donald M. Young, United States Navy. Edmund G. Young, Jr. Lisa L. Young. Shuwen Young. And her husband, Yu Gang Jun.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain silent for the arrival of the official party, the national anthem performed by the United States Naval Academy Glee Club. A moment of silence to honor those killed at the Pentagon, on United Airlines Flight 93 and in New York, and the invocation delivered by Chaplain Major General Paul Hurley, Army Chief of Chaplains. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Paul Silva. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of Defense, James N. Mattis. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States, Michael R. Pence, and the Second Lady of the United States, Mrs. Karen Pence.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please join me in respect for our fallen brothers and sisters in a moment of silence. And let us now listen to these sacred words that we recall at this sacred moment. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. Almighty God, source of all that is good, we give you thanks for your abundant mercy. We give you thanks for your healing presence. As we gather here today, keep us always mindful of lives lost and of the heroism of all our uniformed service personnel and every citizen. I ask that you strengthen our resolve to reflect more fully on these great, heroic examples of selfless service in our lives today. Bless this observance, and may we always remember that sacrifice in the cause of freedom is never in vain. It conquers all. It tramples every evil force. Grant peace to those we have lost in this conflict against evil, and give renewed strength to those who continue the fight, wherever it may be found. And we ask all this in your holy and sovereign name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Paul Silva.
Good morning. Please let me begin by offering a heartfelt welcome to the families and friends of those who lost their lives in this place on that day. Mr. Vice President, Your Royal Highness, Mr. Secretary, distinguished guests, and most of all, friends and family of survivors of the fallen, good morning. Today we remember and honor those who were taken from us too soon on that fateful morning. The 125 service members and civilians working in the Pentagon, the 59 men and women and children who flew on Flight 77, and those who perished in New York and Pennsylvania. None of them anticipated an attack on our nation that day, but as we gather here 17 years later, we know that September 11th, 2001 will always stand apart from other days. It is a day that our nation and our families will never forget. On that day, terrorists attacked this nation because of what we believe in, and the innocents that died that day died because of what they represented: freedom and liberty. These ceremonies today across our country inspire us to reflect not only on the nation's strength and resolve after those brutal attacks, but also on the strength and resilience of individual people who continue to carry on, even to thrive in spite of the pain of losing a loved one. We should also take comfort in knowing that those who died imparted a legacy of selfless service, of courage and patriotism, and a belief in the high ideals, all of which continue to inspire a new generation of grateful Americans who have answered the call to serve. The 2 million soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen who wear the uniform of this nation today carry the spirit and the legacy, that legacy inside of them as they serve courageously and selflessly around the world. In fact, the majority of those men and women in uniform joined after 9/11. Most of them joined because of 9/11. They volunteered during a time of war to defend our country because they believe in what we stand for as a nation, and they live by the example set by those who we honor here today. So today, let us reaffirm the commitment that as long as we have breath to breathe, our military members will defend this nation. We will ensure that future generations
the families of those we lost 17 Septembers ago, let me say to you that here in the shadow of our rebuilt Pentagon, we are all part of your larger family. We stand with you every day in honored tribute of the fallen of your loved ones. In that spirit, this morning we commit ourselves to remembering and honoring the lives that might have been. We keep faith with the innocent who perished. We take solace in their deaths were not in vain, for in their passing they empowered us forever with our enduring sense of purpose. And we remember that hatred, disguised in false religious garb to murder innocents, will not prevail. Though evil visited us on a cloudless Tuesday morning, courage and strength answered amid the fire and smoke in New York City, over a Pennsylvania meadow, and in this very building, as innocent people from 91 countries were murdered on our soil, many of those countries represented by the foreign dignitaries who join us here today. We remember the bravery and sacrifice of those who fell here in America and then on far-flung battlefields. We salute the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, and Marines who nailed our colors to the mast, giving their last full measure of devotion, declaring proudly that Americans do not scare. And we followed to the end of the earth those who sought to break our spirit. Together with the families of the fallen, we remember all that is good, all that is true, and all that is beautiful about those we have lost. And if we remember them, if we honor them by living as they would have us live, if we in the Department of Defense do our best every day to protect America's promise to the world, then we keep our promise to them and to ourselves and to future generations. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great privilege to introduce the Vice President of the United States, Vice President Pence.
Secretary Mattis, General Salva, Your Royal Highness, members of the Cabinet, distinguished members of Congress, members of our armed forces, including the 3rd Infantry Old Guard, who distinguished themselves on this day 17 years ago. Honored guests, fellow Americans, Pentagon personnel, first responders, and most especially to the family members of those who left this life on these grounds 17 years ago today. It is deeply humbling for Karen and me to join you here at this National 9/11 Pentagon Memorial for the 2018 observance, fulfilling a promise engraved on the gateway of this hallowed ground that we will never forget what took place in this place on that fateful morning. President Trump asked me to join you for this ceremony, to pay a debt of honor and remembrance to all who fell here at the Pentagon on September 11, 2001, and to express the gratitude of the American people for all who have labored every day between then and now to rebuild, to re-strengthen, and to protect this nation. The Bible tells us that we're to mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve. And today, as a nation, we pause to do just that. The President and the First Lady are gathered at this hour by a quiet field in Pennsylvania. In New York City, thousands gathered at Ground Zero to ring the bell and recite the names. And here, on the banks of the Potomac, we meet again.
in this place, where the names of our beloved fallen are recited, where they're carved into steel and granite benches across these hallowed grounds, and will be remembered forever in the hearts of the American people. 17 years ago today, America fell under attack. 19 radical Islamic terrorists seized control of 4 commercial airlines to strike the centers of our economy, our military, and our national government. They struck the World Trade Center first. At 8:46 in the morning, the hijackers hit the North Tower. Then, 17 minutes later, as the world watched, the aircraft struck the South Tower. At 9:28, a third group of terrorists hijacked Flight 93 in the skies above Pennsylvania and redirected the aircraft toward Washington, only to be stopped by the extraordinary heroism of the Americans on that aircraft. Here at the Pentagon at 9:37, terrorists struck this great citadel of American strength. The attacks on September 11th shattered the peace of that quiet September morning and claimed the lives of 2,977 men, women, and children. 184 of them fell here. 59 aboard Flight 77 and 125 dedicated Americans serving in the hallways of the Pentagon and our Department of Defense. As the families here know, they were mothers and fathers to be, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters. They were family. They were senior citizens and first-generation citizens, doctors and engineers, a Sunday school teacher, and a Little League coach. They were young professionals with new careers, and they were little children, just finding their way in the world. They were recent recruits and decorated veterans, patriots all. Among them were a mom and dad and their 2 daughters, the Falkenbergs, who just celebrated the 3rd birthday of their youngest, Dana, earlier that summer. A 6th grade teacher, Sarah Clark, chaperoning 3 students on a school trip from California. Her fiance will never forget those last 3 words he heard. I love you. There was a budget analyst for the Army, Odessa Morris, who volunteered her time and skill to serve her community as a financial counselor and a treasurer at her church. And an Air Force veteran, Jim Lynch, who was known by his neighbors for the American flag, always flying atop that 15-foot flagpole that stood in his front yard. To the families of the fallen, gathered here and all those looking on, the cherished final moments you shared with your loved ones no doubt seem like just yesterday. A goodbye kiss, a tender embrace, or one last wave. Just know that your nation understands that while we all suffered loss that day, we know you bear a special burden. But we gather here in the shadow of the building where your loved ones departed this life to to say that you do not bear that burden alone. The American people stand with you, and we always will. We stand with you today here and in memorial services in cities and towns all across America. We stand with you in quiet moments of reflection at bedsides and around kitchen tables, and in humble rituals of recollection and honor that will take place across the nation today. We all remember where we were on this day 17 years ago. Many Americans were busy getting ready for the day ahead. Some were already at work, and some were coming home after finishing a third shift. Others were in the car on a morning commute. My wife drove our 3 children to elementary school on the highway right nearby these grounds, just a little more than an hour before the attack. As a new member of Congress, I was going about my normal workday routine just across the river on Capitol Hill when I learned of the attacks in New York City. But I'll never forget the moment standing in my office when I heard a staffer shout, "The Pentagon's been hit." When I made my way out of the building and walked onto the Capitol grounds, I'll never forget the sight of seeing columns of mud, brown, and black smoke billowing out of the Pentagon, literally darkening half of that crystal clear blue sky. Now, while many of us remember that day like it was yesterday, a growing number of Americans have no living memory of what happened here. Roughly 1/4 of our people were born after September the 11th, 2001. So we gather here today to reflect on what we remember, to remember the fallen, their families, and the heroes that day. But be assured, we also gather here to ensure that each succeeding generation knows the story of what happened that dark day and understands why. We must learn the lessons of 9/11 and remain ever vigilant in the defense of our nation and our people. The terrorists who carried out these attacks sought not just to take the lives of our people and crumble buildings, they hoped to break our spirit. And they failed. The American people showed on that day and every day since, we will not be intimidated. Our spirit cannot be broken. In the moments after the attack at this very place, the character, the resilience, and the courage of the people here shone forth in stories of heroism. The selfless acts of courage that took place defined the day. There was no time to organize a formal rescue operation, so as the fire spread, countless men and women who had evacuated the Pentagon just moments before plunged back in, risking their lives to save the wounded and help those who were trapped in the debris. These heroes saved countless lives. Nearly all the survivors who were recovered from the rubble that day were rescued within the first 30 minutes after the attack. And even in the midst of the attack on this department, the men and women of the Pentagon maintained continuity of operations of America's armed forces spread across the globe. It was a testament to their courage, their resilience. It was the Pentagon's finest hour. In the days and weeks that followed, the search and recovery efforts continued. I witnessed it firsthand when I came here to these grounds on September 12th, 2001. I saw the enormous black gash in the side of this edifice of our national defense. I saw the rescue and recovery personnel working diligently through the debris. I'll never forget what I saw that day. I saw heroism. I saw strength. There were firefighters, nurses, members of our armed forces, law enforcement. There were volunteers and Pentagon personnel, all working together in the hopes that there might be more to rescue, in the work to recover, and to begin to rebuild, not just this building, but to rebuild and re-strengthen our nation. And as they worked, just as it does today, our flag was still there. The stars and stripes were hung spontaneously from this west wall as a sign of America's strength and our commitment to freedom. We honor the fallen by remembering them. But as Secretary Mattis said, we also honor them by ensuring that we do everything in our power as a nation to prevent the evil of radical Islamic terrorism from ever reaching our shores again. Even before the smoke cleared and the fires had put out, Americans began to answer the call to step forward to serve this nation. And they did so by the millions. The lines outside recruiting stations across this country reached around the block in big cities and small towns. It's amazing to think. In the 17 years since that day, nearly 5.5 million Americans volunteered to serve in the armed forces of the United States. Those courageous men and women turned a day of tragedy into a triumph of freedom. As a nation, by their courage, we rallied together to meet the enemy on our terms, on their soil. Because of these heroes, for 17 years, because of the extraordinary work of law enforcement all across this country, there's not been another major terrorist attack on American soil. Today we remember the service and we remember the sacrifice of those who answered the call. And on this day, on 9/11, we also remember the nearly 7,000 Americans who've given their lives on the field of battle since September the 11th. We honor them and those who were lost on this day also by supporting the men and women who serve in our armed forces today. And under our administration, I'm proud to say that we're making the strongest military in the history of the world stronger still. Last year, President Trump signed the largest increase in our national defense in a generation. And with that renewed support, we're giving our men and women in uniform and their commanding officers the resources and rules of engagement they need to fight and win where the perpetrators of this attack found safe haven. It's also important to recall that the terrorists of 9/11 inspired new enemies to spread violence and their genocidal ideology across the wider world. Today, every American should be proud that thanks to the courage of our armed forces and the leadership of our commander-in-chief, ISIS is on the run. Their caliphate has crumbled, and we will soon drive ISIS from the face of the earth. The evil that descended on America 17 years ago still lingers in our world. So to any who would wish us harm, let them know this. As the American people have shown every day since that bright September morning. As President Trump said on these grounds 1 year ago, in his words, we overcome every challenge. We triumph over every evil. And we remain united as one nation under God. Max Belkey grew up in a big family on a small farm in Minnesota. He was drafted out of high school into the United States Army and served for 2 years on the Korean Peninsula. Like so many veterans of the Korean War, he re-enlisted after the conflict ended. And more than 15 years later, he took up the cause of liberty fighting in the jungles of Vietnam. On March 29, 1973, Master Sergeant Max Belkey became the last American combat soldier to leave Saigon. On September 11, 2001, Master Sergeant Belkey was among the first to be declared lost here at the Pentagon. Today, on this September 11th, we mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve. But we do not grieve like those who have no hope, because heroes give us hope. Today we remember our beloved fallen, whose names are enshrined at this memorial and will forever be etched in the hearts of the American people for as long as this nation endures. Today we remember the families of those we lost, who endured this tragedy with strength and courage. And today we remember the brave men and women who responded here and in New York City and in the air over Pennsylvania and on fields of battle in the 17 years since, who considered our lives more important than their own. And today, we breathe a prayer for all of them and all of you. A prayer that I'm told that Master Sergeant Belkey recited every time he spoke to veterans in gatherings large and small across this country. He would always end with the same words. And so I end. To you who are gathered here and have suffered this loss, to those we remember who look down from glory, and to those who fight and stand for our freedom this very hour. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, the rain fall soft upon your fields, and until we meet again, May God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. We claim this ground in remembrance of September 11th, 2001. We honor the 184 people whose lives were lost, their families, and all who sacrificed, that we may live in freedom. May God bless them. May God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountain, from the mountain.
My cousin, First Officer Leroy Homer. My son, Toshiya Kuge.
In memory of Carrie, I present the name of our daughter, who was a very loving mother to Jerome and Javon, a very loving sister to Tony and William, flight attendant, Cece Ross Lyles.